All right, so let me just briefly give some background. After thank you to Anne for asking me to attend the TxDLA's accessibility certification back in November. Everything I showed today is a result of the last maybe 3 months. Now, this certification covers several areas or major areas that we all as a faculty or actually employee have to at least have some idea. Not necessarily that you have to know very details about it. First of all, now you have to know about the law and then what's the trend, because both can be together but can be also treated separately. Okay, we have to be considering about pedagogy and UDL, which stands for Universal Design Learning, in preparing our courses. For those discipline lead or those who will be in a position for procurement, you have to be very careful about the administrators responsibility when recommending software or textbook, okay, or any equipment, okay, because the law has changed or evolved to such extent that it is very encompassing, if I may use the word. And of course, there's a lot of practical application that faculty would be very interested to know or need to know, because there are a lot of skill set that we may or may not have practical experience, even we heard about those before. The last one is a final project that I was involved. If time permits, I would like to show you the video project that I made. Now, first off, let me talk about laws and the trends. Now, I have a red button here talking about lawsuits, okay? Because we have talked about ADA, as long as I can remember. But yeah, from time to time we do have trainings and refresh, professional development. But most of the time we would just put it, behind or beside without paying too much attention. But that is always, like a cloud hanging over. It's just whether we are lucky enough not to really got, the drag into one of these. Okay, so what's accessibility? It has various, not necessarily definition or interpretation depending on the time and the context of it, but based on the lawsuit that I've seen, the definition of accessibility, during this lawsuit is on the right hand side, I can see it, is that accessible means a person with disability is afforded the opportunity to acquire the same information, engage in the same interactions, and enjoy the same services as a person without disability in an equal, effective, and equally, the integrated manner with substantial ease of use. Now, every one of these words, can be further elaborated, but the many lawsuits, have, mentioned ease of use, and then about fully and equally accessible. Now, if you look at, all these texts about any one of these words, you can think about your own situation in the classroom or in your online teaching and see you can apply to it. I'm going to show you some example later on, okay, to elaborate. Now, let's go back to talk about the laws. Now, we all talk about ADA, and how many of us still remember or sometimes hear about Section 504 or 508? Now, when I talk to a lot of faculty recently, a lot of people have some idea but cannot really elaborate. Some are better than the other, if I may use the word, just because their own experience, or oftentimes it's because their own experience in other places. Okay, so ADA, we mentioned a lot. Okay, so what are these for? Now, in my question or email to the faculty, I asked how many, how many of you, or for each of you, how many of the law that you are aware of, okay? Not necessarily everyone, understand or have the information of all of them. Let me just briefly, now, frankly, law is a very boring thing. Sometimes, in my experience throughout the years, sometimes carries, or accessibility itself, sad to say, carries some negative connotation because of the unexpected, the situation or some of the most, an opportune time of this being brought into, attention, and then, people are not prepared for it. And then when I become aware of this and try to pay attention to it, going to conferences, etc. In the past, there were not too many conferences, sessions talking about this topic. And whenever we talk about, it's really, really dry and boring, about all this detail about the law and how to be in compliance and how to go through all this, the information. But I've noticed in this year's conference, there were at least 3 sections talking about it. So apparently, there are more and more attention, being put to it. So let's talk about it now. Besides ADA, we talk about all the time. Actually, there are 2 other law or sections of law that we may need to pay attention. First of all is Section 508. I'm trying to simplify this based on my own experience of trying to grasp the detail, because these are laws or sections being introduced in different times, and then Section 504 and 508 actually dated back to 1973. Originally these are sections of the Rehabilitation Act. And then, why is it related to accessibility then? Because back then, after the Vietnam War, a lot of veterans came back, they're having, the injured and disabled. And back then, it was the rights that they were fighting for, towards that kind of accessibility. Mainly, we can observe nowadays that people are using wheelchair. That was when it all started, and it took a long time. And then it was President Nixon which signed it into law. So briefly, without giving you too much information, or overwhelming too much information. Briefly, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 as amended, the word amended because it has evolved over the years, is a civil right law that prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability. Okay, so we just have to remember this. So in Section 504, it bans discrimination on basis of disability by recipients of federal funds. Now that is important, okay, federal funds. So that means community college, we are all having federal funds. Even if we take $1 federal fund, we will be affected. Higher education provides letters of accommodation. So it does mention higher education. Actually, in all these other sections, we talk about ADA a lot. ADA didn't mention higher education or university at all. It was actually Section 504. So school must provide accommodations to electronic technology for people with disability. Okay, so back in 1973, then was not much about electronic technology. But if we really go into all this law, they have a lot of refresh and then revision over the years. So this, it has expanded and evolved from the early days of, looking at people with physical disability to encompass more and more other types of disability as, the technology or medical advance, and all this interpretation, evolve. So when we look further down here, I have a picture here talking about Section 504 and 508. Both are under the Rehabilitation Act of 73. Okay, 504 declare the civil right, as I mentioned earlier. It prevents or bans people about discrimination. Just remember these key words. It bans discrimination about disability, and every one of these words can be elaborated later. And then also Section 508, which had sometimes do not have as much attention in the past, but is going to be more and more important, particularly for faculties. Let's take a look at what it is. Okay, Section 508, let's just jump right here. Okay, it covers access to electronic and information technology. Blink, see, look at all this online, internet and things. Those were not available back in 73, and suddenly, how come we have this? Because as the law itself didn't change much over the years, but there are a lot of refresh and revision. In particular, there are a lot of interpretation by the court due to the lawsuits, and as the year goes by, there are more and more lawsuits, and then we gather all this, the interpretation or court decision that people come up with these highlights. So it covers all electronic and information technology. So that impacts us immediately, because if you think about all the online courses that you're teaching, or the ebook, or the PowerPoint, all this, the video, these are all information technology. So suddenly we are under the net. Okay, so include any electronic and information technology used, maintained, developed, or procured. So for you, faculty, or discipline lead, when you're considering buying a textbook, we really have to be very careful, because we find out that even a lot of major publishers claim that they are in compliance, the individual product and books may not be in compliance, and then everyone will be responsible. Okay, it includes everything on the campus, even if they do not have a student with disability. Now, this is one of the sticky points with a lot of faculties, and faculty think, oh, I don't have it is, so I may have to wait, until one of these days when it happened or when access office contacts me. All right. So because of this, the electronic or IT stuff, suddenly, it has a little bit, expansion here. Okay. Now comes the, the Worldwide Web Consortium. They have what we call the Web Content, Accessibility Guideline. Now, these are not laws, but this is the intent. These are international, the accepted guidelines, and then more and more due to court, interpretation, the web, we call it WCAG 2.0 is being used as a standard. Now they are very detailed, in classifying, and then basically they have 3 different tiers from level A, AA to AAA, depending on the complexity. The general consensus or practice right now is to follow, the guideline level AA. We're going to give some example. For example, closed captioning, falls under, guideline, level AA. Okay, so as I mentioned here, so this was not the result, not original based on 508, but as a section 508 refresh. Now, all this I'm talking about the trend and the law, because the trend is that it's constantly evolving, adding new stuff as new technology comes along. So level AA compliance is what we are looking for. Okay, so if there's any, the lawsuit, say for example, usually people would look into the level AA compliance to see whether they would proceed with the investigation or with the lawsuit. Okay, so by 2016, the standard are expected to take effect. As a matter of fact, as we are talking, the guideline, the 2.1 is already in progress. So don't be surprised when everything is done. 2.1 is already in effect. All right, so the section 508 now about, the ADA that we talk so often about is actually looking at different aspects. ADA, on the ADA Amendment Act, again, if you look at the law, they have changed. So you really, sometimes we have a challenge, trying to understand it, because they are different laws and they are created different time, have different refresh, and then also they are, even the format or the fonts are different. So when you try to put them together, it is very, confusing sometimes, to say the least. Okay, the ADA, there are 5 sections, and actually 2 sections concern us most as a college and also as faculty, because it kind of identify what is a public entity. So the university or the higher education institute, we are considered as a public entity. See, the old days back, when we look at our, when I was doing the certification, the first lawsuit or case we looked at was actually Winn-Dixie as the supermarket. Briefly, they are so nice, when they see, internet was coming along, they create a website, even though we all understand that Winn-Dixie itself, which used to be in Texas as well, is a supermarket chain. So, but they create a website, and in the website, they put some links to other vendors. Okay, so people can go and get information. And then, unexpectedly, they got sued and lost. One of the findings of the decision was that even the website was not the major, the business or platform of the supermarket chain, but since it is a public entity, it's extended to the website, and because the website has links to other vendors, and those links are not in compliance, so they are responsible and lost the case. So that brings us back to the fact that we are an institution, we are using our LMS and website, and if we put links to other information which turn out to be not in compliance, we are responsible. So faculty, be warned that you are not only concerning the content of what you teach. Anything that linked to your website that you're pointing to, you will be eventually responsible. Not necessarily that you got sued, the college got sued, you are not, but I've seen a lot of cases, the faculty involved is named in the lawsuit, so you don't want to have your name there. All right, so there are actually 5 sections, 2 of them involve us. Title 2 is what we mostly talk about because it defines what's a public entity, and then over the year expanded, to not, include public entities, but extend to other, the commercial facilities. So all this, as we see, is a evolution of accessibility. Okay, beside these 3 major laws, hopefully by now, forgive me if I talk too fast. I tend to, but you can actually, write me later on or put in the chat, so that we can elaborate. Okay, so these are the 3 laws that you or we as faculty have to be constantly be aware of. Not that you have to remember everything, but hopefully you can remember what I mentioned this morning, and then be constantly on the alert. You'll be able to deal with a lot of situations. Okay. Now, beside all this, we also have state law. I'm not going into details. The state law requires that we need to have a coordinator. The kind of information. There's a lot of detail as well. Now, what happens is where the teeth lies here. Okay, it's the Department of Education, and under is the Office of. It's not optical character recognition. It is Office of Civil Rights. Okay, so usually if people, or if they receive complaints now, and I'm going to give you some examples of, how easy people can go to complain, and how often it can be. So if they receive a complaint and they decide there's a merit, they will start to investigate. Okay, so it's under the Department of Education, and then it has the Office of Civil Rights. Let me just give you some numbers. Okay, I was joking when I talked to some people, oh, are you going to scare us by numbers? Some deans I talked to jokingly because they all knew that, I am serious because they all have their own story, to share. Okay, so let me just show you now. First of all, in 2016 alone, over 350 institutions were investigated by the OCR. That include MIT, UC Berkeley, and some community college system. I put the community college system because people will say, oh yeah, Harvard got sued, the Yale got sued, fine with them, not us. We won't get sued because we were just a community college. No, there were actually many lawsuits concerning community college. It's not individual college because there's system. There's some community college systems on the West Coast have 20 or 30 individual campuses. So they got sued as well. And to the extent that one of them actually had to drop their LMS, hopefully or gladly it was neither Blackboard or Canvas, but in the lawsuit, the college district was required to drop the LMS. Now, this is a typical one, just to give you some glimpse of what it can be or how you can get involved. Now, one typical lawsuit against a college system, complaints include what? Inaccessible PDFs. Okay, so remember all these keywords. So video with no captions, delivered in inaccessible media players. That means the control without labels cannot go back and forth by using a keyboard. Insufficient alt text on images. Form fields with no labels. Inaccessible drop-down menus. Accessible features missing from the content within the course management system. Or the campus calendar is not accessible to the screen readers. Variable inaccessible technology. And the faculty just asked another student to take notes for the plaintiff. Just look at this. These are really, really common that we could get involved, in our daily business of teaching. A lot of this material we use. So what got those people in trouble? What got people in trouble by just asking a student to take notes? You remember if you receive accommodation letter from the access office, you do offer, to take notes. So what problem do they have? Inaccessible PDF? Is PDF inaccessible? How can you find out? Okay, now let's look at the settlements, often, involved, included, but not limited. They have to create a new policy to improve provision of services district-wide. They had to bring all the university website into the Web 2.0 AA compliance. They have to replace the learning management system. Isn't it funny? Not funny at all. Implementing new system requirement or equipment to improve accessibility. Okay, engaging instructor to identify course readings well before the start of class. This is what we should do anyway, right? Get your stuff ready, and in compliance before semester start, and using web-based applications. Now, if it is not, the interesting, of course, why I use the word, enough, look at what the following. This, in two cases, it actually include payment to student. In one case, it involved paying $75,000 to each of the students involved. And in another case, the college was required to pay full tuition for 4 years for the student involved in the lawsuit. And then they require training for all the faculty in the whole college district. And all this have to be under a timeline. And they are constantly being monitored. Just think about the administrator's headache. If you think that is tough for the faculty, just think about, okay? So with that, I think I have given you, or hopefully scare you enough with some of these numbers, all right? So let's take a look at how I was trying to look at Colin and then connect all the dots, I'm really appreciative to all the people I talked to on individual departments and the other, the people I know over the year to lend their hands and information or share the information with me. Before I start, let me just give you some number also, not for the sake of scaring, but we do need to know. Okay, college, we have the 2-year college, and then in 2018, we serve over 55,000 students. Now you pay attention to the two numbers on the side. One is black and one is red, and both are different from the one originally. Black is the one that we can identify with the access office. Now I have help from access office and also the IRO and putting banners and putting all this information and read them and thank you, Pasha, and Pasha is laughing because I have him check and recheck and recheck and took this number and go back to challenge the people, the source, and then they come back with some new explanations before we come out finally have this number. Now, granted, this number are not absolute, because there are so many variables, and then sometimes because of confidentiality, we cannot go to very deep. But this would give you some idea. So out of these 55,000 students that are in our college, we could only identify 1,600 of them through our access office. And nationally, if the norm is that 11% of higher ed students are actually having disability. That means we actually have 6,000 some students walking on our campus on our online course, but we only know a small fraction of them. That can be a problem. Not how you provide, how you accommodate those people who identify themselves, but all those who are missing from your classes that you did not know, but are in your classes. That means if they do not do well, the main reason is because they have disability, and then you are not aware of that, and then you do not prepare either in accommodating them or prepare your course to actually so that they can consume. Remember the law we talk about 504. They really have to have an equal, playing field. When we talk about equality, I'm going to show you a picture later. Many of you may have seen before. Now, just talking about spring alone. Now, that number puzzled me for a while because we always in our publication material we say that we serve about 55,000 students in Collin College, and then when I put up the spring 2019, that our current semester we are serving 31,000 students. Why the difference? Because this is the whole year, and this is only spring alone. We have summer, we have fall, okay, and some people graduate and some new getting in. So that's the number. Now, that number 8% increase is that, not surprisingly, but a little bit surprised. When I look at this number originally, they didn't have the spring 2019. When I look at the previous 5 years, every year is about 2% or 3% increase. So originally I was going to give 3% on the upside to forecast what we have. But it turned out that we actually have 8% increase this semester. So with that same number, instead of the serving about 1,000 people when I talk to the access office, we actually have almost like 3,500 students among us that a lot of us are not being identified. That can be a problem to us as a faculty, not I'm focusing on faculty on this session, not so, but so we have actually 43,000 active courses that we are active as student teaching, and then more than 1,000 of them, or 25%, actually have ADA student in the class. If that is not, the catching your attention enough, let's go down to this next section. Faculty. Okay, we have full-time about 1,400 faculty in total. About 400 something, some is full-time, and then 885 is associate faculty. This actually goes in line with the college, I think, the policy that we have, the workload half and half, or 50-50 between, or courses 50% taught by full-time and 50% by part-time. If you look on the right-hand side, now you know what the red number means. When we pull up the number, thanks to Pasha, we find out that 352 faculty out of 437 actually have ADA students in their class. So there's 370 associate faculty add up to 722, or a staggering 55% of our faculty actually have ADA students in your class. So if you think that you do not have ADA student, or you think that you know who your ADA students are, which is my first question to you, in my questionnaire, the answer I can sure tell you is that you actually do not know. You think that you know, but you don't. Okay, so Access Office serve about 1,000 students. This is their official number out of 3,500. Okay, don't be scared by this number, because we can look into how we are going to handle it. Now, so how are we going to connect the dots? So the three major dots I was looking at was the Access Office, where I got a lot of this information, and they deal with the student side of it. That's why I pair them together. Okay, and then for us, as ELC and the instructional designer, we deal with faculties a lot. But oftentimes, even in my years of experience that we heard about Access Office, we know that they help students. They have a very big department, a lot of specialists, an advisor, but I don't really deal with them a lot. And faculty, even though, they probably would be interacting with Access Office more than I do. Okay, but how strong or how weak are the links? Let's take a look. Okay, let's take a look at the Access Office and what they have to offer. Okay, first of all, I skipped disability category earlier because it can be very, not confusing, but it's a very complicated situation, because gone are the day that you look at people who are taking, the accessible parking space or with a wheelchair. How often do we see it? Not very often. But hey, people may not be in wheelchair. They may be in physical, the disability. They may have diabetics. They may actually have heart problems. So you cannot really judge by what you look at. A lot of students in your class either they cannot hear well. So it's not from people who are blind and have a stick that you can identify immediately, oh, they cannot see. And as I get older myself, I have problem reading some of the fine print myself. So as more and more, the senior student coming back to college, you are having more and more of those students. Okay, so let's take a look at the disability categories. Okay, before I look at mine or ours, let's take a look at what Texas A&M have. Okay, so all these are some of the disability that people identify for statistics purpose, but there are a lot more. So, okay, we have the visually blind, we have the visual blind, or, we have people who cannot hear well, or they're completely deaf. Okay, so don't think these are small number. They are getting bigger and bigger, because more and more, veteran coming back from the war with bombs, bombarding their ears every day. They, even if they are not deaf, they lose a lot of their ability. But look at this number that got highlighted: ADHD, learning disability, mental health. Hey, when we thought about our original section 504, we didn't have this. Back then, ADHD probably was very new, or not even in the radar screen. So let us take a look. They have learning ability almost to 1,000, mental health 1,000, ADHD 1,000 or more. But when they're deaf and blind, only have one, and then the physical ability very small number. Okay, this is Texas A&M. How about Collin College? This is from the Access Office. Now, very similar, the category, and I highlighted myself, try to compare ADHD, 218, learning disability, developmental, cognitive disability, about 200 together, and then physical, emotional, mental health, also a bigger number. And the others 144. Actually, that was revised later on to more than 800 number. When I look at this, the question I ask myself, what does it mean? First of all, it reaffirms the fact that we, the same as the A&M and many other the high institution over the country, disability nowadays goes far beyond what we traditionally think about or have in mind about disability. As advanced, technology or diagnosis, the technology, medical technology, come along, we have more and more students identified as ADHD or learning disability or cognitive disabilities. Okay, so this can be, if we could categorize them, broadly into, say, audio disability, visual disability, and then, physical disability and cognitive disability. This is the last category, which is getting bigger and bigger. People are paying less attention nowadays to color blindness, even though that is about 8 to 10% of our population. But more and more people identify as, the more and more students coming from high school, entering into college, then they already identify as ADHD. And then how are we as faculty going to deal with the situation? I also want to point out that this number, as I said, was 144 is because access office could not immediately identify, clearly, or they're in process. Also, one thing missing, let me just take a look at the next slide. The groups, this is the first one, right? Okay, this is the next one, the accommodation that being provided. Okay, all right, so this is what we are trying to help them. Okay, most of them as faculty have already experienced, end up in the alternative testing, give them extra time. Okay, if you are teaching on-site, you put them in a list, this distracted area, and then you use Proctor, the reader, and other technology. But now, before I go further and before I forget, I want to remind faculty that whenever you deal with ADHD students or people you suspect have a disability, do not do it in public, because immediately you are violating the law. You have to have a special meeting with them individually in an private area so that you can go over this. Even if they come with an accommodation letter, you have to talk to them privately. You cannot say, so-and-so in class, come here, come to the front. Immediately, even if you do not directly say that, you are already exposing, their situation, which, if people are not happy, they can come back to actually sue you. Okay? So a lot of this is what I found out recently talking to people. Now, before, we have all this equipment, note taking and sitting, these are something. So, hey, we have note taking and sitting here. And then you will recall and ask me why, Francis, in one of the earlier lawsuits, you cited note-taking as one of the complaints. I'm going to explain to you later so that you remember this story so that you can do it properly in class. Medical absence, because of this ADA situation, non-attendance, people have to take break. And then this is the major area of frustration. Of course, a lot of the situation in the past is when faculty come to me and say, hey, Francis, my course is not prepared like that. How can you give me or change my Canvas or Blackboard into 1.5 time because the student needs this extended time? Hey, those are trivial. If you look at other stuff nowadays that people are facing. You have people, they're always or constant late. The parent is wheeling the student in a wheelchair in the classroom, almost like 30 minutes into the class, interrupting or interrupting the whole flow of presentation of the faculty. And then they take constant breaks away, that they cannot hardly complete their work. Or they will say, hey, in my high school, my children were how come you take so much time? They take them 3 times to complete the work at college when they can do it, than in high school. Can you actually cut down the assignment like they did in high school? Or if you look up here in alternative format, we didn't have any information here. Of course, Access Office do not deal with those. This is what the ELC is trying to work on with you folks. Okay. All right. So one thing I was trying to mention earlier is about This picture a lot of you have seen is about equality versus equity. Say you can say, oh yeah, fairness, or sameness. I provide everything with the same thing, even though in section 504 you mentioned similar wording. But hey, think about these three guys here. The tall one can see everything. This one could barely. The little one cannot see anything, even though they are all given the same kind of circumstance or help. Look at this one. This is what we are looking for, okay? And this is what we try to do. It have to be fair so that everyone have the opportunity to actually consume your content, all right? So the next thing I'm talking about student, okay? I think we have seen some of the students already, so I'm going to just skip through this, but they are interlinked to each other. Now this is a very, I always use the word interesting, because I sometimes have problem of finding a better word. So don't take me 100% when I say interesting, don't feel negative about it. Now statistics. I mentioned this already, okay? These are, the numbers faculty got impacted this semester alone. Okay, and by now we all know that it is not the complete picture because there are a lot of students they do not identify because by law in higher ed, students are not necessarily required to self-declare. So that presents a challenge because if a lot of students coming through high school trying to shake away from that stigma being teased over the years, they do not or chose not to identify themselves. And even if they go to the access office and then accommodation letter, they have a choice not to use it. So the fact that you do not see this in class or students do not produce it doesn't mean that you are, if I may use the word that I learned, when I first come to US, this one of these things, you're not off the hook. Okay, so interestingly, let's find out, who are the faculty involved and who are top 5. Surprise, right? Or shocking. One faculty actually have 19 students in her classes, and you wonder who she is. I know. And 5 of them are 10 students, 3, and of course most of them have only 1 or 2 students. So that's why you may not feel impact enough if it's just asking you 1.5 time of exam. See, the one who got 19 students is actually from a nursing class. And then despite what maybe English or history because we have bigger classes, but actually it's not. Of course those are actually English was not included here. Okay, nursing class, why? We're trying to talk to, when I try to talk to people, including dean, associate deans, and other faculties, or not faculties, the deans are trying to think about the reason. Yeah, because in this, the vocational classes, people are really very, serious about that they could get passed and they would get all the help and assistance they can get. And then by the time they get to the nursing diploma, they have already gone through a lot of this 2-year, 3-year thing to understand that they can have all this this need. So that's why they are identified. The other people, just because students are not identifying themselves. Let me just give you some examples to see how easily we can fall into the traps. The statistics just to let you know, So let me show you this first. Now these are live real example that I received, interesting, right after I completed the certification myself. Okay, so I received one day in my Cougar Mail. Can you give me any teaching tips that may help with a student who has dyslexic hearing? Dyslexic. Okay, is when people have problem with words. Sometimes the letters do not come in the same order, and sometimes they, they would, be shifting. So it's very difficult for people who may do. One of this case I looked at was that a student was very bad, in her work, okay, and then the faculty get to the administrator, the ELC, trying to find out or identify because he suspect the student was cheating, okay, because for half of the semester, the student was doing real bad, and then suddenly, excel, and you know what? It ended up the student had this dyslexic situation. He could not really write well, okay, or read well, but was actually very good in verbal presentation. So she was very bad, in her assignment in the first half. But once later on, she was given an opportunity, or with special help, she was able to verbally or orally present her work and then got very high mark. So explain why, the student, if the faculty was aware of that, actually think she was cheating. but it could, on the other hand, it tells you how much, improvement if you just try to pay a bit attention and offer, some alternative options. Okay, so I received this. What do I do? Or what will you do when you are faculty? Okay, so upon further exchange of communication, the faculty give me more information. First of all, he did not get the information from the access office. It is still one of those common things that he did, or still, as a faculty in the orientation or welcoming, asking the student what kind of things that they find challenging or comfort or difficult. So the students kind of like mentioned that he has signed, this graph here, okay? So, but dyslexia with hearing, that's why I did not elaborate on disability early on, because there's so many different of them, we cannot understand all of them. Even when I brought it to the access office, they did not know immediately. And when I did it in the TxDLA, there are a lot of the professional back there didn't understand what it was exactly. So the reason I want to show this is that as a faculty, we may come into this situation that you have a student do not go to office, access officers come to you, and you as a faculty trying with all good intention trying to help. That is what that faculty I mentioned earlier, asking another student to take note to get and got into trouble because it didn't get from the access office. Without the access office, you have no official record, you have no professional assessment of the student, just like this one, the student claims you have. How do you know he's true or not? Or how do you know what is actually the correct diagnosis? Because even the experts I talked to, no one know what it was. Okay, you give the wrong one, or you go ahead and start giving one yourself, and the student turn around and say, hey, Professor A gave me this, and Professor B and C didn't give me, so I'm discriminated, and they sue. Now, all I'm telling you is not scaring you. I'm giving you from all the story I heard, talking to your colleague. Okay, so this is accommodation letter. Again, this is a real accommodation letter. Faculty was kind enough to share with me what he got. He told me eventually, actually, there are 2 ADA students, to use the word generally, in his class. One went through OA access office, and one he found out himself. So that, again, tell you what you have to be very careful. Now, this is one accommodation from the access office. They talk to the student, they verify, the document, sometimes from high school, and then, sometimes they have to, in the additional assessment, we have specialists and advisors, so don't try to do it on your own, because they have record. Once it's on file, they send the letter, you have a private discussion with the student to go through all this, to go through all this, accommodation ways, so that they would sign it and agree to it, and then you do not give anything extra without, getting the access office involved. Okay, so talking about accommodation letter, I want to also mention that more and more we have dual credit class, and you have students from high school. The challenge is that, high school, as I mentioned, they're required by law to self-declare, and then they have special program following through all through the high school year. But once they come to the college we treat them as adults. We have different set of law. The problem with dual credit students is that, not the student themselves, but the parents can come and then talk to you and complain. As I mentioned briefly earlier, they say, how come my kid, were treated this way in high school, and now they are not given this accommodation, or they are not, being informed, or how come it takes them so much longer time? Can you cut your assignment or give them less to do? That kind of situation. To the extent that, sometimes I heard some cases, even our legal counsel got involved. And then don't get me wrong, we didn't get any OCR investigation, but it doesn't mean that we did not have OCR knocking on the door. We did, and it is more than you can think. But fortunately, we have been doing such a good job in documenting and carrying out a lot of things that eventually they do not find it worth or credible to pursue for a full investigation. So, folks, let's all work together as a team to prevent our name or any of name become, in that legal document in a court case. All right, with that, I have a very limited time. I would like to open this for question. I apologize, and I try to cover as much as I can, but as you can see, instructive design, let's just show you what we have in the available for you. Is it expand, expand, expand? So we would roll this out one by one. If you start working with us about all this multimedia, all the technology, all the training that we have, all the software we have, and then the facility whisper room helping you to do audio transcript. Quality matter, our instructor designer are trained in the quality matters to help you, to do the OEB checklist is very, similar, but not as detailed. But, we are in a good shape, if I can call it this way, or confident, let me put it this way. So we have to go through all these other area that you have to be aware of, to prepare your course so that it is in compliance. But don't worry, we are here to help. Look at the faculty training. My colleague or team member, has created a new training course which will be rolled out, I think, in the 4th semester in for all the new hire, and you're more than welcome, even a veteran, to go back to refresh yourself. One of the a module is specifically devoted to accessibility, and then all the area that we need to improve ourselves, such as replacing the pictures with alternative text, how to prepare our, say, Word document with heading, so that people who use a reader can jump to different paragraphs instead of following line by line, which can be very boring or not necessary. We have to be careful about the color and contrast. Now we talk about web pages. As a matter of fact, for us faculty, besides web page, we can actually take away the word the word web. Is all pages that in your course content. And then about media accessibility, a lot of case or high profile cases involve closed captioning. So for you as a faculty using a textbook which use publishers material which have a lot of PowerPoint audio, take a good look and see if they have audio captioning. They may be prepared some years ago, and the audio and the video do not have closed caption. And then remember, Section 504, certainly you become part of this issue because you allow the inaccessible material in your class, and then bring it to your disciplinary before your department choose the textbook again, okay, with quizzes. So with that, I don't think I have time to show the video, the 3.5-minute video that I prepared to arouse, awareness. Is actually part of my final project. But I'm just skip it. People who are interested, I'll send you the link later on. The whole idea of this video is to bring about awareness, and then also give you the example of what we have available at Collin, and then end up with a live example of a student, a potential student in your class who is actually blind, that people are not aware by just looking at it alone. And then through this video, there were closed captioning, and then closed captioning, in WCAG 2.0 AA requirement have to be 100% in sync. You cannot just use the YouTube, the auto captioning function, which only give you 80% of accuracy and is not in sync with the mouth movement. These are not in compliance. Okay, with that, let me just switch back to, okay, question and answer. Roy, Roy, is there anything that I need to pay attention or bring up, or Anne, if you have been watching, is there anything that you want to supplement or add on? Because Anne is the one who is, our leader, and she actually is also the quality matter coordinator for the college.
I don't have anything. You covered a lot. There's a lot of information there. Anna had mentioned in chat that a lot of this applies to like all classes, not just online.
Exactly. Now the class I taught was actually titled digital accessibility. As I mentioned, in some of the cases, these are not only confined to online courses, but all classes. But also remember, we all have used the the curb cut, right? When we are pulling our trolley or going shopping and then find out this curb cut very useful. Remember, these are the result of Section 504 back in the 70s when people need accessibility in the buildings. It was intended for people using wheelchair, but remember how often do we use it nowadays? Okay, we use it a lot. As a matter of fact, I did not show one of the picture is that 50% of the students actually, that was a Cornell research, 50% of the students actually use audio transcript in their class. And then also 80% of people actually use closed captioning in the audio, in watching the video so that they do not disturb children, so that they can watch work, at night.
Yeah.
Think about it.
I thought it was a very good point you made too about to make sure you talk to the student in private and not publicly in class.
Yes, I cannot emphasize enough. Thanks for emphasizing again. Yeah, always in private because these are very sensitive information. And again, the students don't even have to come to you. All they need to do is go to the ORC website. I tried before myself. It's very easy. All you need to do is go in, fill in a form, and then depending on how lucky you are, they will come knock on your door.
Francis, this is Anne. My question for you is, what's the most important one thing that you recommend for faculty to do first?
The most important thing I want to emphasize is that you have to make sure to check that your course material is in compliance. I think, most likely they are not in the current status. So come to the ELC, let's take a look, to review it and make sure that it is in compliance. Now, I always jokingly talk to people, often when it comes to court, they will ask 3 questions. What do you know about it? When do you know about it? And then have you done anything about it? So I think to protect ourselves, or at least put ourselves in a better position, we have to start taking action. We need to put some policy together and procedure together, which we are working on right now. And in the meantime, the faculty yourself, take a look at your course. You remember the picture I sent you in my question, asking you whether you think that is in compliance. Most of them are very honest, saying that you don't know. Some say that you know. But actually the answer is that simple picture, which a lot of us as faculty do when copying, creating our course, is that they are not in compliance. Therefore, a picture, if you have it in your course, the student cannot read it when they are using a screen reader. It uses boldface to highlight the importance, but blind student cannot see it. You have a cartoon picture, people do not see it, and they don't know what is there, and then the reader stuck there. Yeah, think about your course design, come to the ELC, let's take a look and discuss. Don't be frustrated, because we all are when we first see the daunting task about the lawsuit, about the work that required. But just think about it. You are only doing it once, but down the road, first of all, your course will be so much more, accessible to not necessarily the student that you can see, but those, the 33, 3,500 students who may be in your class. And then suddenly you realize why some of them never do well, no matter how hard you try, because they did not identify, and then you did not prepare your course content to be readily or fairly consumed by them. And hopefully that answers.
Yes, thank you.
All right, I think we are coming to the close of the 60-minute mark. I always very optimistic that I can cover a lot, but as usual, there are a lot more that I want to cover. So just take this as a beginning of a long and very beneficial relation between yourself and the ELC, and then we would get together and work on all this. Now, one thing you want to do, I also make suggestion, plan to make a suggestion, is that take a look at your first homepage of your Canvas course, and then also take a look at your syllabus, because a lot of times the syllabus is the first document of the item that people would come along, or the student come along. If they have issue there, then everything goes down from there. Okay, the document can be a PDF. PDF is very difficult to correct, change it, or go back to the original Word document. Microsoft Office is very good nowadays. They actually have a accessibility checker that help you identify potential issues and help you to correct it. And also in Canvas, there is a tool called accessibility checkers as well that would help you to check the accessibility of your page and give you guidelines and hints to how to correct it. Come to the ELC, we'll show you everything. Okay, I thank you very much for coming to this this webinar. I hope that you have some idea of what accessibility and what you as a faculty have to, pay some attention to, and then let's work together to improve or towards full compliance. Thank you very much and have a good day.